Here today in the office of Mayor Dorsey Appears of the City of Albany. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you
So
for being here.
it comes off an announcement this morning. Of course, we know we were waiting, anticipating the amount of money that the city would get in the state budget. And then this morning, another layer upon that. If you can just explain a bit here where we're sitting right now when it comes to the funding from up the street.
This is such a great day and moment for the city of Albany. I think for the first time in a very long time, you have this synergy and partnership and a level of unprecedented investment from our colleagues in the state, our governor, the legislature, Majority Leader Stuart Cousins, Speaker Hastie's, and even our state delegation wanting to see Albany win, and not just wanting that, but investing. So what we have here is an additional $20 million this year, which will help in addressing our city's budget shortfalls. But in addition to that, we will see that money reoccurring for over the course of 3 years. So a total of $60 million worth of funds being invested in the city of Albany, in the capital city, from our state legislature and governor.
Where exactly? I know it's the total number that's been put out there is 44.4, right? Million of all the state funding in a bundle. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so for this year in particular, we were already anticipating $20 million of that $44.4 million. But what we're seeing is an additional $20 million and 4.4 million, which is considered transitional municipal, not aid, but there's a terminology for it. But again, pointing out the fact that of the 44, 24.4 of that is new monies that the city had not seen before. And again, we'll see some additional funds over the course of the next 3 years.
And that's different than the pilot 19A funding, right? That's why it's new money, right?
That's
From the state,
correct.
because the 19A, that's stuff that comes in every year, but that's a little bit more than normal too at the 20 million. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And to Mayor Sheehan's credit, the 19A funding, but Mayor Sheehan also played a part in going up the hill and advocating for additional increased state funding to support the city. And so I'm just really honored and proud in this moment as a new mayor representing the capital city. We were able to go up the hill and really make the case as to why it's important to invest in the capital city, because we're here. We've been supporting, we support the state in a variety of different ways, and we now have a governor and legislature that understands how important the capital city is. And this is really, given all of the different terminologies for the funding, this is really additional state funding to support the city of Albany.
Yeah, I was going to ask. You mentioned selling Albany, right? And there was a bit, you could say, potentially a competition, because we knew that other cities were also receiving funding this year, new money at that. What did you say to sell Albany?
Well, one of the things I started with was talking about the fact that this is really, for many of our state legislators, this is their home away from home. And it's important to always take care of home. They spend most of their time here. And so I've talked about the need to reintroduce some of our state legislators to Albany itself. Most of the time, they come here to work and then they go home. And so my message has been very clear. I want you to enjoy your second home. Stay for a little bit, meet the residents, learn the culture. And I think having that different level of intimacy with the city, it opens some of our legislators' eyes to why it's important to invest in the city, because they spend so much time here, and to invest in the people who live, work, and play here. So that was one of the primary focuses of my remarks, but also pointing out the fact that we have so much non-taxable property in the city of Albany, and really talking about the percentages in which, for example, 38%, only 38% of our properties are taxable. I found that many state legislators were shocked even other mayors when I talked to them and broke those percentages down that way.
Yeah, I'm going to circle back to that in a second because I did have a couple of questions. The 3 years of funding here, the 20 million each year, why did you think that was necessary?
You know, every year, every mayor who has represented the city has gone up the hill to make the case as to why it's important to invest additional supports in the city of Albany. And so for the first time, that message did not fall on deaf ears. I think everyone recognizes the unique situation that the capital city plays, and that reoccurring monies helps the city to, especially given some of the fiscal challenges that we are facing today. It helps to steady the city. It helps us to maintain our core essential services, not just to our residents, but also those essential services support all of the non-taxable properties. And so that reoccurring money is really investing and giving Albany its just due.
So does it wipe out? You found 7.8 in savings so far, is that right?
7.6
7.6
million.
So does this money, in addition to that, does it wipe out any deficit? How much of a chunk, percentage of it does it take out for first fiscal year 25?
So really how I'm looking at this, and I am really relieved to say yes, the $20 million in addition to the savings that my administration has been able to find will address the 2026 structural deficit. And that is a huge relief given all of the mandates from our residents and the priorities that they have around things like public safety, economic development, investments in youth. And so this really gives us the breathing room by clearing up and addressing that budget shortfall so that we can focus on those priorities.
So that's the 19 million that had been out there, is that right, of the deficit?
So essentially the deficit for 2025 was at roughly 19.6.
Okay, and that's wiped out now.
So what we've been focusing on is the those funds addressing the 2026 structural deficit. We are currently in 2026 and implementing that budget. We've closed out our 2025 budget.
Okay, and there's something else you said this morning when it came to this influx of state aid, and you said this is going to help us avoid putting the full burden on the taxpayer. So I guess my next question, my follow-up to that would be, how much of a burden could it be on the taxpayer at the end of the day with all this now considered and in play?
Well, again, my team, my priority has been to prevent additional burdens on our city residents. Our city residents are already overtaxed. I talked about the 38% taxable properties. And so having this breathing room allows us to maintain our essential core services that we provide to the city. But in addition, we get to focus on some of the other things. We've been talking about turning the lights back on in Albany and wanting to ensure that we have a vibrant city. I've been talking about an ambassador program to ensure that we have presence on our business corridors. So in addition to maintaining core services, I am now, as an incoming mayor, able to follow through on some of the clear mandates that residents gave me when I took office. And so this makes the job, even though it's a tough job, but this makes it a lot easier when you don't have such a huge structural deficit to focus on.
When it comes to now, as you plan here looking forward, you look at some of the expenses going up, right? I think people see that across the board, not just in Albany, municipalities and their own paychecks, about 20% higher in those expenses. And you have the tax levy, the property taxes. How do you manage, what are you doing to manage that in the coming years now? Because I think the state aid obviously helps put you on a good footing, as you've mentioned, but now how do you address some of those things as you referenced it earlier?
So,
especially expenses are higher, how do you mitigate that? How do you make up for that?
Well, there's some definitely expenses that are higher and some that really it's tough to control. For example, inflation health insurance costs. And so we are internally working to get a handle on those items and have as realistic as possible projections. But then there are other things that we can control and account for. And so my plan has always been to come in and first have a full assessment of our fiscal situation and then bring in third-party expertise as needed to support the work that we're doing as a new administration. But 3 takeaways. 1, to prevent what we've seen in terms of structural deficits the city experienced. Increased communication across our departments. What I have found is that when we are not communicating about projects and initiatives that have budget implications, you're going to see increased and overestimates for things on as it relates to the revenues. In addition to increased communication across departments, having current information. We found that, for example, federal grants that the city had received in the past, those grants had expired and yet those revenue lines were still in the budget. Again, over projections on the revenue side. And then lastly, centralizing resources. Across many departments, we have some employees doing duplicative services and duplicative contracts. And so centralizing those resources will allow us to see a significant decrease in savings towards the city.
Yeah, that was, I wanted to get to some of the questions you answered that were levied at you from the Common Council. I think it was 25 of 56, at least for now, that you've been able to come back at it. And there was, as you just mentioned, I thought some of the themes were over budgeting, maybe over projecting. And I think the next idea would be like, how do you make sure you're projecting in a way that's sensible now? What do you do to make sure that happens?
Well, and again, it goes back to those 3 things.
Yeah.
Having current information, that was one of the drivers for those over projections, not having accurate information when developing that budget. But in addition, again, that communication is key across departments, and not just across departments. What I've started to do is right out the gate, I stood up a interdepartmental team, ensuring that we are communicating with the Treasurer's Office, communicating with our Chief City Auditor, so that we are taking a holistic approach to addressing the city's finances. And we have an antiquated financial management system in which all of these parties play a role in. And so my administration is looking at overhauling that financial management system, bringing it up to date. That too will contribute to being able to ensure that we are better planning as it relates to our budgets.
Are you going to hire a new budget director to help
Yes.
facilitate that?
Yes, we will be hiring a new budget director. But in the interim, I'm really excited about being able to bring on a colleague that I've known and respect, Bob Ward, who's no stranger to those in Albany, bringing Bob in as a financial advisor to assist with our transition as an administration as we implement the 2026 budget and put in controls and maintain some of the controls that I've already started, but also as we look ahead to planning for the 2027 budget.
You've spoken out against an opposition of bringing in, or not bringing in, but having the comptroller look over the budget. Why?
You know, I've never spoken out against having the comptroller come in.
Okay.
I've been very clear to my colleagues, and I know that there was those who felt that the comptroller needed to come in immediately. Mm-hmm. My view and my plan has always been, as a new mayor, I want to come in and do a thorough assessment of our financial situation first. And that's what my administration has done. We have a firm handle, and we've done a comprehensive budget review. And the second part of that plan was, once we've done our own thorough assessment and a thorough budget review, and we have a firm understanding of the budget situation and our fiscal challenges, then engage with a third party. It could have been the comptroller's office, and now in this case we have an advisor who has worked as a deputy comptroller in the comptroller's office. And so this has been my plan all along. I think that I am a leader who owns this is the people of Albany put me in this role. And so I needed to do my own work first to understand our situation before opening up the House to allow other people to come in. And so given the work that my team has already done, we are well positioned to bring in outside expertise.
So you wanted to do that first before, to make sure you know what your house was, how the house looked.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Personally, I think that is what leadership is about. And I own, even though these are budgets that I inherited, I own the city's financial challenges. But my team, as a new administration, needed to come in and fully understand what we were dealing with. And we have a firm handle on that, and we are now, and it was also because of that firm handle, I was able to then go up the hill here to make a strong case laying out our city's fiscal challenges, and that has contributed to the additional state funding that we've received.
I did want to ask, because I think this, obviously you learn from the past, right, and into the future. And I think everyone would agree with that. But and as someone that's followed budgets, and not just in Albany, but the state and other municipalities, I do remember watching the former administration come out and say, and even the last budget, say, well, we wiped out a $16 million deficit and then end on good fiscal footing, and then the next couple months find out that that's not the case. What's your perception of how all that happened at the end of the day? I think that because then obviously you can learn from that when it comes to some of the questions you answered. But I want to know from you, what's your perception of how the situation changed so quickly? I think a lot of you have said that you were almost shocked by what had happened. I think that's one of the reasons, right?
Yeah, so in addition to, again, the importance of cross-communication across departments, and having current information, again, there was outdated information being used to build the budget. But in addition to those things, the direct management and oversight, a budget is a living and breathing thing. And when you have a city workforce this size with a lot of departments doing great work, it's important to have a level of oversight and management. And so my administration has already come in and started to put those controls in place to ensure that we are maintaining a level of oversight and management, to keep an eye on how and what we're spending. And then another point that hasn't been brought up is post-ARPA dollars. A lot of municipalities, Albany is not unique in this, when you look at cities across New York State, are dealing with the aftermath of being able to benefit from ARPA dollars and significant investments from the federal government. Those dollars are gone. And so as a result of that, a lot of the programs that were stood up, positions that were budgeted for, in the absence of those ARPA dollars, that money has to come from somewhere. And so my administration has the benefit of coming in at this juncture, understanding that some of what's baked into our budget is due to ARPA-related expenses, and now moving forward into 2027, we are better able to project and budget for those things.
And for those that don't know, the ARPA was the federal funding post-pandemic to help some cities recover, just in case people are listening and are like, what's ARPA? So it's America Rescue Plan Act, right?
When you live in municipal
Oh, I know.
land.
It happens to me all the time. The other, and you've, in terms of your tenure here, so in a few short months, we're just beyond 100 days at this point, if they don't know more than that, but the collaboration with the council, I think, is something people have noticed when it comes to inclusionary zoning and changing that. I know that was a big one for you. We've seen just last week in terms of some the new violence prevention programs, things like that. In terms of this topic, I know there's going to be a local law I propose in terms of, you mentioned oversight, and that's what made me think about it, and what the council can see in terms of funds being transferred or moved up to, I think, 4%. Is that something that you would be a listener to of? Is that something that you think could help in terms of the oversight aspect of this to make sure the money's going in the right places?
Yeah, absolutely. Listening to and learning in real time on the intent of the legislation. We all have a role to play in the city's fiscal soundness, whether that is my administration, the legislative branch. We all play a critical role, and so my stance has always been to be collegial in nature and working with the Common Council. I actually served on the Common Council for 6 years, and I understand the important role that they have in voting on budgets, passing budgets, and playing a part in this. And so looking forward to working with the Common Council on a continuous basis, because it is in all of our best interest, because we're here to serve the people of Albany.
One of the questions that hasn't been answered, that maybe you can, in terms of speed cameras. They were wondering about, are the projections going to be higher? Because that was one of the issues of over-projecting and the money that didn't come in, and there was some optimism around that. Can you answer that now for us?
So what I'll say is what we've already started to do is look at the 3-year average for some of those items in which we saw over projections, and so just to have a more accurate picture. And so we're looking at that. I don't have accurate information at this moment because we're looking into that.
Right, and that'll help. Obviously, you don't have your budget yet, so that'll help you be able to project accurately, at least a little more with a bigger evidence, right? For lack of a better term, right?
And that's why I think the 3-year average is a good way to land in a safe place versus just looking at the year before. So as we look ahead to 2027, having our good friend and colleague Bob Ward working with us, but also working closely with the council and our departments, looking forward to putting together a balanced budget for 2027.
Back to a state policy, the Tier 6 that we just saw pass through the state, governor signing it, and some of the changes they made to quote unquote fix Tier 6. Do you know how much that's going to cost you?
So our budget team is looking at that, looking at the data and the information at this current moment. Right now, we do not have a figure. We know that there will be some responsibility placed on local municipalities like the city of Albany, and so we'll have that figure sooner rather than later.
Why were you comfortable supporting that, even though you didn't really know the final number?
Well, as someone who has been a part of the state retirement system, I know how important it is to have good benefits and to be able to have a legacy to leave behind for your family. All of us who work in public service, it's tough work, it's hard work, and it's important to be able to retain employees, state and city employees, but also recruit new. And it's hard to do that when you don't have good incentives, and people work extremely hard and deserve to have some type of cushion and nest egg to be able to fall back on.
Finally here, as you look a little farther down the road, and I've heard this brought up before in terms of Rapp Road, the landfill, and then the end of the 19A funding, I think combined, that's $25 million that the city could be on the hook for. I know Bob Ward is somebody, he brought up that stuff to me. I'm sure he's brought that up to you as well. Where is that on your radar right now when it comes to all? Is that part of this equation, or do you have to think about some other methods there?
So all of those items will be a part of our 2027 budget development conversations. The closure of the landfill is upon us. That's no secret, and the city has been preparing for this for a long time. It just so happened that on my watch, the landfill will officially close. And so as we look ahead and map out 2027, those will be critical aspects of the conversation.
All right. Mayor Pliers, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.